Hi guys, Ed here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Porsche Pack and doing a short review / opinion segment on each car. To start with, I'm going to be looking at the Porsche Panamera Turbo and working my way up the list in sort of how I rate the cars, starting from worst to the best. So obviously my least favourite car of this pack so far is the Porsche Panamera Turbo. Now this probably doesn't come as a massive surprise, as this car is, it's a Panamera. Not only do I not particularly like the looks of the car, but also the handling of this car is expectedly nowhere near as sporty as a lot of the cars that you can expect from Porsche. It's quite boaty in the way it feels, and also the power steering in this car is quite intrusive actually. I find that you get a lot less feeling through the steering wheel, which is actually something I expected out of this car. In real life it's probably very similar. Another thing that I don't really like about this car is actually the wing that appears. I think it's about 56 miles an hour or something like that. The wing pops up and it's massive. It's actually well bigger than I thought it was going to be. But it really doesn't suit the car. Everything about this car seems a bit overkill for what it is. I mean, with this car, why don't you just get a 911 or something, Yeah, so this car is just not great. I mean, even like the four-wheel drive system on it is quite hard to use. It understeers very easily. However, it's in the game. It's fair enough. It's modelled very well. It drives as I expected, so good job, Kunos. You've done a good job representing this car probably quite accurately. And not that I've driven this car in real life, but it seems to it was exactly as I expected. Anyway, let's move on to the next car. We've spent enough time looking at the Panamera. Okay, the next car that I picked from the Panamera it was actually quite a difficult choice, because as soon as you get past the Panamera, which is obviously the least favourite car in the pack, you then get a bit of a toss-up, and you could have some people favouring other cars compared to others, and really you could just pick anything to go towards the top of the list. So for me, next was the Cayman S. This car actually didn't handle as well as I thought it would. It's actually quite unforgiving, especially if you get into a bit of a slide or anything like that. It can slip away from you completely quite easily. So it just wasn't quite as intuitive, especially me being someone who really enjoys drifting. I obviously tried to slide this car about. It's a rear-wheel drive Porsche. It's modern as well. Modern Porsches are known for handling really well now, so I really wanted to try that out, but it was quite difficult to control at that sort of limit of grip, which I wasn't expecting really. I was thinking it was going to be really supple and nice to drive, and going through corners normally and just racing it is really nice to drive. It's actually a fun car. The only downsides, I'd say, like I said, the limit of grip, it's not quite as nice as I expected it, but also I just felt like it was a bit more boaty than I was expecting, and the way it handles, sways a bit more than I was expecting, which can bring in understeer from time to time, and also it suffers from the modern power steering feeling that you get in a lot of modern cars now, which is really apparent in Assetto Corsa when you compare it to older cars that don't have power steering, or even older cars that do have power steering that just is not quite as electronically assisted as the modern cars are now. So yeah, it's just a little bit numb feeling. And also I find the interior sound of this car isn't that great. It wasn't as enjoyable as a lot of the other cars, which again, you probably should expect that from a normal road car that isn't something like a 911. However, it was good fun, and it was good to drive. So next in the list for me is the 911 Carrera RSR. This car is actually really cool. I really love the style of this car. A classic Porsche style like this is awesome. This particular model of 911 is probably the best looking 911 that they ever made, at least in my opinion. But I just found that this car suffered a little bit from, well, it's actually that typical Porsche, the Porsche characteristic that everyone always has said about, where the back end just wants to step out and it's like a massive pendulum effect, and basically it just wants to kill you most of the time, and that's definitely something that this car suffers with. So it's something that I found a little bit difficult to work around. Once you do hook it up, it does feel really great, and this car is really good to drive. But like I said, it's got that massive pendulum effect, and it does want to kill you all the time, so that does make it a bit difficult to love sometimes. Another thing that I don't think is great about this car is the vintage tyres. I know they're not meant to be as good feeling as the more modern tyres that you can get on this game, but I just felt like there wasn't really that point where you could feel the limit of grip. It seemed a bit more of it seemed to like have a smoother transition into it, and then all of a sudden, because of the way this car is, you're spinning out without any control over it, and the tyres just don't seem to give you the feedback that you need to be able to work around that limit without spinning out very easily. So yeah, the vintage tyres I think let this car down slightly. I would have liked to maybe try this car out on maybe a slightly more modern tyre, which obviously is unrealistic, but maybe something like a street tyre that you'd expect on a car from the 90s might be something really fun that you could try this car out on, or maybe a modern slick tyre as well. I think that if that could be done, to sort of think, oh okay, so if someone had this car in real life in nowadays, they'd be running a more modern slick tyre on it, and it might handle completely differently with that kind of tyre on. I'd be interested to see what that feels like. But otherwise, this car is a lot of fun. So the next car that I've put on this list is the GT4 Club Sport. Now this car is actually a pleasant surprise. I was looking at this car and I was intrigued to see how the GT4 felt, because the road going version of this car is raved about. So I really wanted to know what made the Cayman GT4 so great, and if there was any underlying characteristics of the car that would shine through in a more race car version of it. And I think there are elements of this car that feel really great. So the mid-corner grip and also the way the chassis feels as you're coming through the corner, and the way that sort of you get a bit of rotation through the car, it feels really great, and this car is very satisfying to drive. Now the downside to this car, and the reason why it's not higher on the list, is because it's just a bit too easy. This car has huge amounts of grip. I mean, I was running it with traction control on because that's what it has as standard in real life, and I wanted to drive this as close to real life as possible, but I didn't need the traction control on. It never activated because this car has just got that much grip that you can floor it out of corners, and it gets that bit of chassis rotation that I was talking about, where it can really hook up out of the corners, and then that's it, you're off. It's got so much tyre grip, it's unbelievable, which can make for it to be really fun. But also when a car has that much grip and you start pushing it to the limit, most of the time you just get understeer and you can't really play around at that limit, so it tends to be a bit less fun as a result there. But I think this car could actually be really great as a like a single make race car for people to do online racing with. It could be something that if you had a whole field of these cars, you could get some really close racing. So I think that's really good, a really good feature about this car. Otherwise, it's fun to drive. It's very responsive to your inputs, and it has tons and tons of grip, so you can go really fast in it and still feel quite confident in how it's going to be around the corners. So for that reason, I give this car a big thumbs up. It's great. Okay, so now we're getting up to the top of the list, my favourite cars of this pack, and this car is insane. At 100% turbo, you could expect this car to have about 1400 horsepower, and the acceleration that this car has is just unbelievable. It gets to, I think, 0 to 60 was something like 2.3 seconds or something like that. It was that I looked up online. It's unbelievable. I was testing the cars around the Catalonia Grand Prix circuit, and coming out of the final corner, this car can't carry the same sort of speed as, say, an F1 car can, but by the time you're getting down the end of the straight and you're over 200 miles an hour, and you think to yourself, hang on a sec, I was going out of that last corner at 70 to 80 miles an hour, and I'm already at 200 by the end of this straight. This car is immense. It is just unbelievable. The twin turbo flat 12 is an insane engine, and in this car it pulls like a train. And another great feature of this car as well is the massive turbo lag. I mean, it's not usually something that people want to have, is massive turbo lag, but it just makes it so fun, and that vintage feeling as well of the turbos kicking in at such a high rev range is so much fun to play around with. This car is just not quite something that I could see myself driving all that often. It's a bit like the Lotus 98 that, or is it 98T, whatever it's called, Ayrton Senna's old car. It's something that I might get in every now and then just to have a play about, but it's not something that I could hot lap in, because I would just get frustrated, because it catches you out so easily. You'd be coming out of a corner and just all of a sudden you hit the limiter because it's just lit the wheels up. I mean, not only that, was the gears are ridiculous on this car. It's only got 4 gears, and in second gear, and you're already, I think the limiter in second is somewhere around 120 miles an hour, and once you're getting up to about 100 miles an hour, which is already pretty high in the rev range, it's when the turbos suddenly click in and they just light the wheels up at over 100 miles an hour, which is just ridiculous. Everything about this car is just mind-boggling, but I guess that's why I love it. Okay guys, we're getting very close to the top of the list, and some of you might be surprised that this one only came in third, because I'm sure it was a favourite for a lot of you guys, due to just the vintage nostalgic feeling, because the 935 Moby Dick is one of the most iconic looking Porsches ever made. It was definitely something that I'm sure everyone sort of giggled like a little girl when they saw this appear on the car list for the first Porsche Pack. It's obviously, the looks are just incredible. It's great vintage car. It's got, again, like the previous car, the 917. It's got the massive turbo lag that is just so much fun to play with. But I think, like the 911 RSR, it's also got those vintage tyres which are quite difficult to predict and use, so that sort of lets it down a little bit for me. But otherwise, this car is obviously really great to drive, so much fun. The other thing, the other thing is comparing this to the 917, they're very comparable because they're both the vintage cars in this pack. The 917 compared to this has just got such crazy power and crazy turbo lag that this one's just a bit more manageable, and I find that a lot more fun to drive because I can really try and push it coming out of the corners, whereas in the 917 I'm sort of tiptoeing out of the corners because I'm trying to work around that turbo lag, and it's really fragile and really easy to spin out of corners. But this one is a lot more fun because you can really push it, and basically that's the reason why it's just edged the 917 ever so slightly. But let's move on to my second favourite car of this pack. Okay, so something that might come to a surprise to you guys is that my favourite second favourite even, my second favourite car of this pack is the 911 Carrera S. Now, this car is a modern car, which, as I've described in the other two modern cars in this game, a lot of modern cars suffer from that sort of power steering feel and electronic power steering that is really not that fun to drive, especially in Assetto Corsa. But this car actually doesn't suffer from that quite as much. It's still there, but it's actually still really, really fun to drive. And something that amazes me about this car is just how great the handling is, even though it's still a rear engine car. It's something that like the 911 RSR, the vintage car, is something that it suffers with, is that rear engine feeling and how it can step out and be really hard to control once you get beyond the limit of grip. This car, however, is just unbelievably easy to drive, but also really, really satisfying. It's not easy like the GT4 Club Sport is, but that car is too easy to drive. This car is just malleable and easy to manipulate. It just allows you to step the back end out of corners, and you can just do whatever you want with it, which is just awesome. It's so great to have a car like this in the game. It's brilliant. Downsides to this car, like I said, it's got the power steering feeling, which I don't love, and also it's got paddle shifters as well, which I think this car would be even more fun if it had an H pattern shifter. I'm not sure it would edge to the top spot of this car pack, but it's definitely close, very, very close. This car is brilliant fun. Okay, so finally, the most favourite car for me in this pack is the 918 Spider. Really, it's for obvious reasons. This car is already a legendary car in the car and hypercar world. It's something that is awesome to have in this game, especially seeing as we already have the LaFerrari and McLaren P1 in the game. That the comparison between those three cars has been something that's been highly talked about. The Nürburgring lap times of the P1 has been kept a secret, even though the 918 was published and everyone was like raving about how fast it was. It was unbelievable. And then the P1, they said that it was close, but we don't know how close. We don't know if it beat it. We don't know if it was slower. It's just always been something that's been hotly talked about, and the comparison between these three cars is something that everyone wants to know about. And to be able to compare all three of them in what I think is one of the best racing simulators that we've ever had is just an absolutely unique experience. And being able to drive this car finally in Assetto Corsa, after I've racked up a bit of time in the P1 especially, and the LaFerrari I've obviously tried, the startling difference between this car and the others is obviously the four-wheel drive system, but the way that it's implemented in this car is like nothing I've ever actually felt in any other four-wheel drive cars in any other video game. It's quite amazing, really. I mean, there's a way you can hook this car up coming out of a corner to just get that little bit of oversteer and then just sort of push it out of the corner, and it seems to just rotate through the corner that in a way that I wasn't expecting it to do, but for some reason is really easy to do. And this car is unbelievable. You think of cars with this much power and this much speed, and you think you're just going to get to corners and you're going to completely outbrake yourself every time because you're going way faster than you normally would and that you would expect. But this car for some reason is a lot easier to drive than the LaFerrari and P1 in that regard, even though it's still just as quick. It's unbelievable. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave you guys with a couple of laps of this amazing car around a circuit of my choice. I haven't decided yet as I record this, but I'm going to be just giving you guys a few onboard laps just to round off this video. If you guys enjoyed, leave us a like, and please do subscribe. And if you guys have got any suggestions or things you'd like to see from Porsche in the upcoming videos, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.